Welcome to the Think Factory podcast. We got one question for you. What keeps you up at night?
Welcome to the Think Factory's Workplace Podcast, powered by OGC Solutions, the podcast where we explore the ever-evolving landscape of workplace dynamics. My name is Alka Bahal. I'm a partner at Outside General Counsel Solutions and the chair of our Corporate Immigration Services Group, and I'm your host today. I'm very pleased to have with me Ann Sparks, the Associate General Counsel of Thermon Incorporated. Welcome to the podcast, Ann.
Oh, thank you so much. So nice to be here.
Wonderful. Can you start by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and Thermon?
Thermon is a company no one's ever heard of unless you've needed our services. But Thermon's been around since 1952. It's publicly traded, and what we do is basically monitor and or adjust the temperature of a process. So if you have a refinery or a chemical plant and you need to make sure that a temperature is maintained while that process is happening, that's what we do essentially. So yeah, it sounds it is actually really interesting because the engineering that goes into it is just astonishing. So yeah, really proud of this company, and I've been with them. I just started my 4th year, and lots and lots to do and build on, especially in these times, and as we look to diversify our portfolio.
Oh, very interesting. So before we get into more about the company and where it's going, let's talk a little bit about you. So you had a very interesting career so far that brought you to this position at Thermon. So tell me about your career path.
Well, it is really interesting because I thought I've been super, just very lucky at the opportunities I've been given. And I thought I went to Rice undergrad, went to UT Law School, and I was a paralegal at Baker Botts in between, and got invited back. And I just thought that would be my career. I'd go to Baker Botts, I'd work my whole life, I'd retire at some point. And in fact, it's been just the opposite. I actually started with Shepherd Mullen in Los Angeles, and I was in LA for a couple of years, and then I came back to Texas. And since then I've been general counsel or regional general counsel of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different companies. And hopefully not because I can't hold down a job, but because I would be invited to join these companies, and a number of them I was the first in-house counsel, the first general counsel, and I would come in and look at what the company needed to have some transparency and decision making, some rigor and structure, infrastructure for compliance, and then put that in place. And just about the time the company was really clicking along and making good progress, then of course that's when a buyer wants to buy you. So we've sold. I was part of the team that sold Dresser to GE. In 2012, I was part of the team that sold Nextera 1 to Blackbox. So for me, who I really thought I was going to step into those halls of Baker Botts and be there my entire life, I have instead been given the opportunity to do lots of fun things in lots of different industries.
That's terrific. So you sort of by default developed this really good skill for creating or sort of bringing the fitness of a company up to standards for acquisitions. You've done that several times now.
Bringing order to the chaos. If I had a motto, which I don't, but it would be bringing order to the chaos and then selling it. So it's been a lot of fun. So I started with a company that we bought and sold microchips and other components, owned by 2 brothers who were very successful, very profitable, and it was, of course, with two brothers, it's always very challenging because I called them the push me, pull you, because they always wanted to do different things and go different
Sure.
directions.
Uh-huh.
And then I did was the general counsel of a telecom company, and then I was general counsel of Dresser, which was also an oil field equipment manufacturer, and then GE. And then I went to Sky Chefs, which was airline catering, and I was there for a long period of time before, again, the owner, which was Lufthansa, announced they were selling. And then I became the general counsel of Fitness Connection, which is, these big giant gyms, which I just loved. Got through COVID, and then a headhunter tapped me on the shoulder and asked if I would go to Thermon and do for Thermon what I had done for Dresser. And so I've been here ever since.
Oh, that's terrific. So you seem to gravitate back towards these GC roles. So what is it that you enjoy the most about that type of position?
A couple of things. One, I always say it's sort of like be playing, a Jeopardy, but without any prizes, right? Because you never know. On any given day, I always have a plan for the week and the month and what I'm going to accomplish, and the day, certainly. So I'll come in, and then there'll be that phone call, or these days, it's a Teams call where someone will send me a message and say, "Hey, do you have 5 minutes?" And it's like, "Sure, I do."
Famous last words.
Absolutely. And then it's like, well, okay, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. And so it really is, I'll take, pick a category for 500 or something for 5,000, or there's always a whammy in there, right? So that's one of the things I like about it, is being able to do and address and solve a broad array of challenges. The other thing is obviously I love what I do with regard to being part of a team, whether it's the legal team, whether it's the leadership team, whether it's the compliance team. Being a part of a team that is actually driving a company forward, and making a difference. I mean, I think, again, I've been lucky enough to do both. I've also been in private practice, right? So I started with Shepherd Mullen. I was with Fulbright. I was with Yetter and Warden for a while, in Houston for a long while. And I think being a litigator and being in private practice, you get involved in a matter, and maybe if you're lucky, you get to see it through. Whereas if you're in-house counsel, someone will come and say, "We have an issue with this," and you look into it and make recommendations, and then you get alignment of the team, and then then you can go actually change a company. So, and for the better, hopefully. So that is, for me, why I've done what I've done for so long and so many times. So
I can understand the satisfaction that must come from that you're actually, at the helm, if you will, steering a ship and having an impact on policy, growth, direction.
exactly.
Impressive.
And it's so one of the challenges is always going into a company who maybe hasn't had the same relation with their in-house counsel, right? And this is sort of going to how it has it changed over time. There are a number of companies, where I go in and they're like, "Oh no, the attorney's here," everyone duck for cover, or the response is, "Oh my gosh, she's gonna say no, right? She's gonna kill it. We worked really hard on this deal," and I'm not that way. So, but first you have to develop their trust. You have to actually demonstrate that you know what you're doing, so that there's a reason for them to listen to you, and that you will add to the success at the end of the year. If you can look back on the year and say, "We closed this deal, and we closed this deal, and we bought this company, and we integrated this company," then yeah, it's all lawyer work, but it is, it's very rewarding because you build something. And I'll say just, of course, by this point I have 1,000 stories, but I remember.
I love to hear your stories, Dan.
So crazy. But it was when I was with Dresser, and we had a manufacturing facility in Alexandria, Louisiana. And there were local politicians who wanted to meet with leadership, basically to make sure we weren't going to close the plant down. And so Jim Shower, who's the CFO, came to me and he said, "Hey, I'm going to go to Alexandria for this meeting. I would really appreciate it if you go with me." And I just looked at him and said, Jim, is that a good idea? Because, if you tell them the attorney's coming, everybody's just going to clinch. And it's just going to immediately ratchet up the emotion in the room.
High alert, lawyer in the room.
Exactly. But he just looked at me and just a complete straight face and said, "Well, you're not like a real lawyer." And I'm like, "But I am. I really am." But he was like, "No. So come." And so I did. I went, and these guys were, trying to strong arm us into making certain promises, concessions, etc. And I was able to referee that, and we all left and shook hands and went and had a beer. So, it's those kinds of situations that I love.
That's brilliant. I love that. So you said every day is like Jeopardy. Tell
Yep.
me an interesting story. I've now you shared a few with me. Tell me one of your Jeopardy days. I want to hear one of your interesting events that sidelined your day.
Oh, well, the one there are so many. But one that comes to mind is it was a Sunday afternoon. And we had, again, for Dresser, we had a manufacturing facility in Courbevoie, France, so 3 hours north of Paris. And we had a brand new plant manager who had just joined us from Austria. Very buttoned up, very hello. And luckily, we had spent some time together. Right when he first got there, he came to a conference in the States, so we were able to meet face to face. So, So my phone rings, of course, on a Sunday afternoon. Never a good sign. Never, ever. Because no one's calling just to ask a question, right?
Right.
And he he was very calm, and he said, "Yes, well, we seem to have a problem." And I said, "Okay. And what is that problem?" Well, it turns out we had imported a load of steel from India, and we had run it through. We were manufacturing on Saturday and Sunday, and it turns out all of it was irradiated. So with cobalt blue. And by the time this was discovered, it had gone through the entire plant, right? And so we yeah, that was one. It's a favorite. And then we had to work in partnership with the French nuclear, and I forget what their official name is, and we did, and we were able to bring the plant back on, obviously following their protocols, we were able to bring the plant back online faster than we expected. And there's what do you do with the equipment? What do you do with the raw materials, the whip? And so that's one, because he was just so calm. And
Fair to say that was a test of first impression, that you had not had irradiated metal go through your warehouse, your operations before.
Exactly. It was like, okay, so, or there's I can tell stories all day, but I was on vacation with my two amazing daughters, and we were on a cruise, and we were eating ice cream. We just, helped ourselves to the soft serve, and we were walking out of the ice cream shop, and there was this giant TV, and this is when there was the leak in the Gulf of Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned my head just in time to see a dresser valve being dropped to the bottom of the ocean. And not just like hey, what is that thing that's being dropped to the bottom? No, there was a close-up of the dresser logo being dropped to the bottom of the ocean. And the thing about it was, I was like, what? Okay, that's not a subsea valve, by the way. And so there was a bit of discussion with the involved parties about how I needed them to sign something saying they had bought that without our knowledge of use. And
no.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and last but not least, because this one actually has I know, and right now I'm telling all these dresser stories, and dresser was just a great time. I had a general counsel, Linda Rutherford, who's still a very close friend. She was just an amazing leader. But there are these issues. So I was in, I forget what country, and it was late, and my phone rang, and it was a sales guy from Canada. And he said, we have a problem because there was a 4-phase project, and we had done phase 1, and we were in the process of bidding for phase 2. And the company, who shall remain nameless, what they had done was they took, and this is how old the story is, but they had taken a CD of the information we had submitted for the first bid and sent it to all prospective bidders for phase 2.
Oh dear.
And he was like, "Oh, you need to get on the phone with them right away, and you need to call them, and you need to get it back." And I'm like, "Okay, well, in the first place, let me see the non-compete." Dead silence, crickets. And he's like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, the non-compete. I mean, not the non-compete, the confidentiality agreement."
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, we didn't ask them to sign. Of course, they have to keep it confidential because they solicited a bid. We sent in a bid, so of course they have to keep it confidential." And that's when I had to say, "Well, of course they don't." Right? I mean, unless there is a written agreement, then they can publish it just like they did. But at the end of the day, again, after lots of conversation, I was able to convince this company to recall all of the CDs, even though it was pointless by that time because we already had our information.
Yeah.
But also to award us phase 2 and phase 3, which would be the only way we could be assured that people weren't unfairly competing against us. So,
good solve.
So lots of learnings there, but it's one of the things that to this day when I'm doing I for example today I put together a training deck because I'm going to be doing some training for 2 companies Thermon acquired last year. And one of the points I always like to make is like, by the way, unless you have a confidentiality agreement in place, they are free to do whatever they want with whatever you tell them. So and it's always, I love it because the guys are always so surprised.
They don't know that.
There's this concept out there that there's this general law. And I'm like, nope. But that's why you need me.
That's why they need you. That's right. So you have to really get an in-depth understanding of the products that your company is selling, the people, and also the cultural dynamics in order to make sure everybody is operating in the way they should, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the getting to know the people is really, really important because people learn different ways, and you have to figure out, how can I explain to the sales guy who's been doing sales for 35 years of this particular product that you have to get a confidentiality agreement, or you have to have a limitation of liability. What's in it for them, right? And
Right.
that's absolutely fair.
Yeah.
Absolutely fair. And so once you figure out that, then what is it that's the right size? So we talked a little bit about me bringing order to the chaos, but me setting up infrastructure, rules, policies. You don't want to slow the company down. You don't want to overwhelm these sales guys, or who's out there making money for the company. But you need to have some transparency, and every company has a different tolerance for that and a different speed, right? For how fast that can happen. And then you need reinforcement, because people tend to, when there's a stressful time, go back to what they know. And so that's why I spent this morning preparing a refresh course on contract reviews and policies, process, and approval requirements. So, but that's the fun part when you do it, and then when there's that aha moment,
right,
where the sales guy go, I love, and I'm laying this all on sales. I support HR, I support procurement, I support. Right now, obviously, we spent this week looking a lot at tariffs, so import, export. But Yeah, it's when there's an issue that comes up and they come back and say, okay, the customer won't pay for this change order, for example, or, um, we have this issue. What's our exposure? And you can actually say, well, here's the good news. So, we were able to get a limitation of liability. Or knowing the product is critical because, like, well, how are they using the product? Oh, well, it's not supposed to be mobile. It's supposed to be, stay in one place. Um, and that's another thing I really love. Sorry, when you ask me why do I love what I do, that's going to be a long answer. There's just no way around it.
Yeah,
But
that's fine.
but learning, I really have been. We went over all the different industries that I've been in, um, and learning a new company and learning the people and then what makes it work better or more valuable is super cool, right?
And obviously you're good at it. You've been so successful at so many different types of organizations, and yet they kind of have this constant theme of you putting order to the chaos, creating systems where there were none. And a big
Thank
part of
you.
that is you getting to know the people and the culture of the company, right? So things have
Yeah.
changed over the last many years, and certainly since COVID, we see workplace dynamics are very different, right? How has that affected what you see in the workplace? Do you have pressure in Thurman for people wanting to work from home or do hybrid, or, we've got sort of this push-pull these days of the push to come into the office and people wanting to still stay home. What are you seeing?
Oh, well, it's definitely a transition from, in there was a great guy, who was the head of operations for Sky Chefs. And he started as a dishwasher, and his entire career was with Sky Chefs, and he worked his way up. So he was the head of operations. And he would come by my office, usually Friday afternoon, and say, come on, Sparks, let's go for a walk. And essentially he wanted to walk around and see who was there and who wasn't there, who had left early, because this was very important to him. And for good reason. His point of view was there at Sky Chefs, for example, there are 42 kitchens around the country in all the major airports, 30,000 employees, and they're all working. So people who have these cushy executive jobs, ought to be working as well. And I totally respect that. So we would walk around and he would count noses. But I think you're right. When I moved to become general counsel of Fitness Connection in November of 2019. So really incredibly brilliant timing. And I did it because Lufthansa had announced they were selling Sky Chef. So otherwise I'd still be there. Loved it. And loved Fitness Connection. But it was very difficult. Got there in November, and by May, we had closed all the gyms, of course, and
Right.
laid off, furloughed 99% of the employees. And that was a major shift for, first of all, it was a new team there and they were just coming together, right? It takes at least a year for a team to gel. And they were just, and I was chief of staff then, and we were just, starting sort of that process when we had to, I couldn't send him, but I asked the CEO to go home, right? This company he built, because if something happened to him, I mean, he was such an amazing leader. So Phil Howard, who was just great heart and great mind. But so since COVID and everybody was working from home, and it was difficult because we were making a lot of difficult decisions, but doing it on the phone and through Teams and that sort of thing. And so what I see now is just that is the way. I don't think there's going to be, I don't think anybody, and I could be wrong. I know there are companies that are saying everybody get back to work, but for the most part, there's a blend, right? It's 2 days a week or it's 3 days a week. And I think even the leaders, even my friend Pat Birkelbaugh from Sky Chefs would agree now that it's okay for people to work from home and they're still as productive, even if they go let the dog out in the middle of the day, right? As long as you get your work done and at a level that's acceptable, meaning you're still held to the same level of competence and achievement, then it's okay. And so at Thermon in particular, right, people go into the office 2 days a week, some because they want to go in more, but that's really acceptable. And I think I laugh about it because people ask me this question because I'm, work with people. And I say, look, here's the deal. I mean, when we were in the office, there's a lot of that human interaction, which is so critical to the success of an organization. But I've found now with Teams and with, all these other platforms, honestly, I'm sitting a lot closer. So my boss, Ryan Tarkington, his face is huge on my big screen in front of my desk.
Right.
So there's a lot more, once you get used to different tools, right? I mean, we all know the story about the poor, what was it, the judge who had the cat face and couldn't figure out how to get it off, right? And there's always somebody who's on mute and that. But at this point, I think we've all gotten used to communicating effectively through Teams, through the other platforms. So it's the world has changed.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with you. Definitely agree with you. In good ways and bad ways. And we have to kind of deal with what we have and try to see the good in everything, right? So in that same sort of vein, the concept of mental health and work-life balance has really evolved, right, since post-COVID.
Yeah.
So how important do you think, mental health is, employee well-being, work-life balance is in the workplace today, and having employers recognize this?
Well, I think there's certainly a lot more. It's a lot more out there. Like if you go back, mental health and wellness for attorneys is always a challenge, right? Because it's very stressful, no matter if you're in-house or if you're with the law firm. If you are performing at your peak, it's just going to be, it's long and it's hard and there's a lot on the line. So I think there's a lot more talk about it. And I think there is some, I would say it's shifted, not as much as people talk about it, but it is certainly shifted to there is respect for, people going and working out, people doing those things that make them, at the end of the day, in my opinion, better lawyers. And that is taking that break and going, and I go to the Y. I have a personal trainer who is just so soothing. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm going to like work out or just to hear him talk, but it's very, very
but it's good
soothing.
For you either way.
Absolutely, either way. And so I think there's definitely been a shift, and it's much more acceptable now than, I mean, I can obviously another story when I started at Shepherd Mullen a time ago. I worked for this partner who, if I wasn't in the office Saturday and Sunday, would call me at home and say, "Where are you? Blankety blank blank blank. You need to get in here. Blankety blank blank blank." I don't think that happens anymore, and if it does, then someone should change jobs. But back in that day, that was the way it was done. But I do think, and I have some. So my daughter has just started as a first year with a big firm in Manhattan, and she's working a lot. But they really do recognize how important it is for everyone to take time for family and take time for themselves. So
good to hear it.
Yeah.
It's definitely a different world than what we came up in.
Definitely.
Right. Based on your years of experience, what do you see as the biggest challenges businesses face, say in the next 12 to 24 months?
Well,
long list, right?
that was the easiest lob I've had since I could even remember. So, well, uh, gosh. So we're at a time, and I have been talking a lot in this past weekend with my I've got lots of lady lawyer friends, right? We're all about the
Mhm.
same vintage, and um talking about this exact thing, because it used to be the challenge was work-life balance. The challenge was where you wanted to go. Do you want to be in-house? Do you want to now the challenge is it's just chaos. Whatever the
Mhm.
rules were about who could do what vis-a-vis imports, exports, um various departments in the government, that's just all gone. And I think from a practice perspective, it's a challenge. How do you, I mean, I take very seriously, as everyone who works in-house, and everyone who's outside counsel as well, take very, very seriously the protection of the company, right?
Mhm.
So you look at, okay, so the law has changed to this. So how do we best put our company in the best position to succeed so that people have jobs and people pay taxes, et cetera? But you want to protect your company
Right. Got to
from
minimize
the
risk everywhere.
changes.
Mhm. Mhm.
Exactly. But it's hard to do that, and it's when you don't know what the rules are,
Mhm.
or when they're going to change, or so you have to balance being immediately reactive
Mhm.
to it. um you, you can't do that. I mean, it used to be so a law would change and it would be implemented on this date, and you had a plan in place, and you would go forward with the plan that you had time to think through and
Right.
bounce off, right? And so I think just right now, you can't, there's no room for the same planning. The best you can do is stay on top of what's happening
Mhm.
and try to be put in place. So we're back to the infrastructure. Put in place those things that will be clear, no matter what happens going forward, that you're being reasonable, and you're preparing for an auditor coming in, or someone saying, well, did you pay these tariffs, for example?
Right.
And you want to say, well, what we did was we reviewed the information that we had on this date. This is what we did. This is the test we used. You have to basically be playing defense in a situation where you don't know even what direction the ball is coming from,
Mm. Yeah. So
right? I
true.
mean, that's I think that's going to be the challenge the next, I would say, 48 months. But
Mhm.
um but we'll see. I at some point, or maybe 36 months, because I don't know where we'll be at that point, right?
Right. Agreed. Agreed. Yeah. Very, very difficult to predict. As you say, things do change definitely on a weekly basis, almost on a daily basis. So one theme,
Absolutely.
yeah, right. One theme I'm beginning to hear more and more from leaders across all different industries is a key trait now required for leadership is agility. We have to have the ability to pivot quickly because, like you said, it's not like it used to be where there would, be a proposed change in the law, then there would be the
Right.
change in the law, then there would be a date that it would be effective. Now it's like, wait, what happened? The law changed? What is it? What did it get changed to? Wait, where do I find the information about it?
No, it's 100%. It's so, and those skills of being familiar with and availing yourself of the information that's in non-traditional locations, I think
Hmm.
is really, really helpful, because the changes that are coming out are not being announced right in the Federal Register. They're not being announced. They're being on, in a chat room somewhere.
Yeah.
So you have to be enough tech savvy, or have someone working with you who is, that you
Hmm.
can find out the nuggets of information. That's one. And flexibility, I agree, but I would temper that with you can't just keep pivoting,
Hmm.
right? So as a leader of a company, you want to, I mean, you need the flexibility to pivot when you have to, or
Hmm.
when you should, but it has to be balanced with, what do I think is going to happen tomorrow? What do I think is going to
Hmm.
happen in a month? what do I think is going to happen in 6 months, a year, and to back to your, 12 months or 24 months. So it's not, flexibility is important, but also balance and just not panicking in the face of chaos.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So you're very experienced in that.
I feel like I have been, my career's been leading up to this moment.
Yeah.
Where I have said recently, we're just, being very, very Texan-y, we're just gonna hunker down and ride through it. I mean, there's no other choice. There's no, the rational, and I had the same thing where in the past 2 weeks where someone said, but that's not rational. That's not rational. And that's the reality. Just forget rational.
Yep.
Forget rational. But you have to be, I think you made a very good point. You have to be flexible, but I want to, say, you also have to say, okay, that's what happened. Like when my friend called and said, oh, by the way, we have completely irradiated the plant in France. So, how do you feel about it? And how's your French? And do you know the word nuclear in French?
Oh,
So, right. And that's sort of where it's a lot like where we are.
Yeah. Very fair points. Very, very good insights. So, yeah, well, thank you, Anne, for making the time to chat with me. I have one last question for you.
Of course.
Which is a question that we ask all of our podcast guests that I did not prepare you for.
Oh, dear.
And that is, what keeps you up at night?
Oh, and right now, it is exactly what we just talked about. So I have, I am very passionate about what I do and passionate about being part of a force of good for the company, right? So that we can all make money and, and keep it, which is sort of one of my mantras.
Good goal.
And right now it's like I'm not on certain topics, right? I'm not sure how to do that. I can meet with outside counsel, I can sit in on seminars, but I'm not sure. There's no sure plan. And it's it feels a lot like during COVID, right? So every day for 2 years, right? There was it was, how do we manage a business when now we don't have any employees or now we don't have any income? And how do we come back from that in a way that makes sense for the company, its employees, and its owners? Because all of those things were in play. It's a lot like that now, where it's like, okay, we same kind of feeling, right? So just and if before we leave, I just want to, and I didn't brief you on this, but I want to put a plug in for my friend Chelsea Hilliard, who's a partner here in Dallas. And not only is she amazing and brilliant, but she just executive produced a movie called A Law Unto Themselves: How Women Lawyers of Dallas Changed the Law of the Land. And it's premiering Saturday, March 8th at the Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum.
Amazing.
And I have been lucky enough to see a preview of it, and it is just, very impressive. I mean, it's just the ladies themselves and the fact this movie was made, and the fact my friend Chelsea, who is a partner and also the president of the Dallas Women's Lawyers Association, I don't know when she sleeps. And I think I'm pretty high energy. But the fact she was able to do this is just really exciting. And if anybody's out there and you're out, in Dallas, March 8th, come to see it. Otherwise, it'll be released. I don't know where they're releasing it after that, but I just want to put a plug in for Chelsea and for the movie. So it's just because it deserves, a round of applause.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Anne. Thank you for sharing all of your wonderful insights and information about your history and your path. I've learned a lot. I'm gonna implement some of your suggestions in my own day-to-day life. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Oh, you're very welcome. This was the Think Factory's Workplace Podcast. I'm Alka Bahal, and signing off with Anne Sparks from Thermon. Take care, everyone.